My friend's violent cop boyfriend kidnapped her and nearly killed me for trying to help her, so I made sure he lost his badge and freedom. 2 years later, he's begging me to help him and understand his side. I'm a tattoo artist, and I swear 50% of my customers are complete angels, the sweetest people you'll ever meet. One time, I sort of went above and beyond for one of them. Nothing crazy, just spent an extra hour or two helping them figure out how to cover a tattoo connected to a toxic ex, completely free of charge. In a normal workplace, they would just count their blessings and leave. But not this guy. He showed up the next day with an entire crew of motorbikers and told me they were my new clientele. Another time, this chick came in asking for a tree on her arm. I was obviously happy to do it because it was simple and easy. But when she rolled up her sleeve, what I saw was effing disgusting. There was a huge bruise in the middle, one that couldn't have been a cause of anything other than the hands of another man. I didn't say anything, just tilted my head slightly upward to make eye contact with her. Her eyes were filled with shame, like she was pleading with me not to say anything. I just nodded and asked where she would like the tattoo, usually while I draw me and the client talk about whatever, gossip, their kids, the news, literally anything. But this lady was responding to everything I said with just one word, so I gave up fast. After I was done, she thanked me profusely, in a way that was more than just for the tattoo. It was for my silence. I reassured her that it was no problem, and gave her a smile to say, "Come again when you're ready to sort this out." Because if there's one thing I learned from my younger sister and her abusive boyfriend, it was that people can only be helped when they want to be, and there's no point going to court if both the victim and the abuser denies it ever happened. It wasn't even 10 days later when she showed up again, asking for a semicolon tattoo on her left ankle. "Oh, what is it for?" I asked, playing dumb. "Just a reminder to keep going." Her voice was sheepish, like she didn't want to give away too much. I saw her face contort as she placed her foot on the mat, like even just moving was enough to cause her pain. It took everything in me to fight the instinct of shaking her shoulders and forcing the confession out. That day, she didn't even tip me, but took a business card and told me she'd be back. I never saw her again, until 2 months later, that is. It was a Friday night, and she had a completely black eye, looked like she hadn't slept in days. This time, she asked for just a straight line on her upper thigh. It was obvious that she only came as an excuse to be away from whatever was going on at home. "Hey, I had some spare food and water I never ate. You're the last customer of the day, do you want some? Otherwise, I'm gonna have to throw it out." I could literally see her heart beating at 2 times the speed before agreeing, and as soon as I handed her the sandwich, she barely ripped the plastic off before shoveling it down her throat, as if she hadn't eaten in days. Her tattoo would only take 10 minutes, but I dragged it out to 2 hours. We were at the 1 hour, 45 minutes mark when she finally broke the silence. Well, kinda. She pulled out her phone and pretended to text someone. I could see in the reflection of her glasses that she was just on her settings app. "Hey, my friend just told me she won't be home to let me in the front door tonight. Is it cool if actually, you know what? Don't worry about it, never mind. Of course you can stay here. I was actually planning on pulling an all-nighter to work on some stuff." I was lying through my teeth, but she bought it, or pretended to anyway. I could see her trying to hide her excitement, but the corners of her lips were turned up all the way. That night, she slept on the tattoo bed while I pretended to work on my computer. I had just finished another game of League of Legends when I heard her laughing in her sleep. I turned around smiling, but that's when I saw tears streaming down her face. I sat down beside her. "Please don't make me go back there. Keep me safe, please." I held her hand and nodded, and suddenly she shot straight up and finally explained what was going on. Her boyfriend was a police officer, and a well-respected one at that. Except when he went home every day, instead of watching TV or drinking a few beers, he'd spend the night wailing on her. He called it their little game. She had nowhere to turn, except for now. I opened my mouth to ask more, but she shook her head. "Not tonight," she said quietly, before turning her back and going back to sleep. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. It was the police. My heart nearly stopped. I quickly told her to hide in the back room and stay quiet. I took a deep breath and opened the door, trying to look casual in my wrinkled t-shirt from yesterday. 2 cops stood there. One of them I recognized immediately from her phone background, the boyfriend. He was tall, clean-cut, with this smile that didn't reach his eyes. The other guy was shorter, older, just standing there looking bored. They both had their hands resting on their belts, too close to their GNs for my comfort. "Morning," the boyfriend said, all friendly-like. "I'm Officer Mark Reynolds. We're looking for a Jane Wilson. About 5 feet 4 inches, brown hair, probably came in for a tattoo recently." I didn't flinch. "Nope, don't know her. I get a lot of clients, though. You got a picture?" He pulled out his phone and showed me her face. I shook my head. "Sorry, man. Doesn't ring a bell." I kept my face neutral, though my mouth had gone completely dry. Officer Reynolds looked past me, scanning the shop. His eyes lingered on the door to the back room. "Mind if we take a look around? Just routine." "Actually, I do mind. I've got client privacy to think about, and I don't see a warrant." I tried to sound casual, but my heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. I crossed my arms, blocking the doorway as best I could. The older cop sighed. "Come on, Mark. We've checked 3 places places already. Let's go. Reynolds kept staring at me, this little smirk on his face, like he knew, like he was just playing along. Sure thing. Sorry to bother you. If you do see her, give us a call, yeah? She's not well. Family's worried. There was something in the way he emphasized family that made my skin crawl. I nodded and closed the door as they left. I watched through the blinds as they got in their car. Reynolds looked back at the shop one more time before they drove away, his eyes meeting mine through the glass. When I went to the back room, I found her curled up in the corner, shaking. He knows I'm here, she whispered. He always knows. You're safe, I told her, not entirely believing it myself. But we need a plan. You can't stay here forever. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm Melissa, by the way. I never even told you my name. Tony, I said. And I think we need to be smarter than just hiding you here. That guy's going to come back. And that's exactly what happened, but not in the way I expected. I spent the rest of that day in a state of constant paranoia. Every time the bell above the door jingled, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Melissa stayed in the back room, only coming out when I gave her the all clear. I canceled my appointments for the day, telling clients there was a family emergency. Not entirely a lie, I guess. We need to get you somewhere safer, I told Melissa as I locked up that evening. This is the first place he'll check again. She nodded, staring at her hands. I don't have anywhere to go. My parents live in Florida, and all my friends here are. His friends, too. I thought about it for a minute. My buddy Victor owns a cabin about an hour north of here. Uses it for hunting season, but it's empty most of the year. I bet he'd let us use it. I called Victor, making up some story about needing space to work on a big tattoo project. He was cool about it, told me where to find the spare key. I packed some supplies while Melissa gathered her few belongings. We waited until after midnight before sneaking out the back door to my hit-up Honda Civic. The drive was tense. Melissa kept checking the rearview mirror, flinching whenever headlights appeared behind us. I took a bunch of random turns, doubling back a few times to make sure we weren't being followed. Probably overkill, but better safe than sorry. The cabin was pretty basic. One bedroom, a small kitchen, living area, and a bathroom with a shower that barely worked. But it had electricity and running water, and most importantly, it was hidden down a dirt road with no neighbors for miles. You take the bedroom, I told her. I'll crash on the couch. She looked around nervously. What if he finds us? He won't, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Get some sleep. We'll figure out next steps tomorrow. I barely slept that night, listening for cars on the gravel road. The next morning, I drove back to town to open the shop, leaving Melissa with my old laptop and a burner phone I'd picked up. I told her to stay inside, keep the curtains drawn, and only call me in an emergency. The shop was quiet that day. Too quiet. I kept expecting Reynolds to show up again, but he didn't. That almost made me more nervous. Around noon, my buddy Chris from the motorcycle crew stopped by for a touch-up on his sleeve. You look like shit, man, he said as I set up my station. I shrugged. Rough night. Hey, you still work security at the hospital, right? Chris nodded. Going on 5 years now. Why? I hesitated, then decided to trust him. I've got a situation. Friend of mine is trying to get away from an abusive boyfriend. Problem is, the boyfriend's a cop. Chris's face darkened. That's a tough one. Cops protect their own. Yeah, I'm finding that out. Any advice? He thought for a minute while I worked on his tattoo. Documentation. Get everything on record. Photos, recordings, medical reports if possible. And find allies within the system. Not all cops are bad. This guy seems pretty connected, I said. Chris nodded. Then you need to be careful, man. These situations can get ugly fast. After Chris left, I picked up some groceries and supplies before heading back to the cabin. Melissa seemed calmer, had even showered and changed into some clean clothes I'd brought her. I've been thinking, she said as we ate dinner. I need to get my stuff from the apartment. Just some clothes, important documents. I can't start over with nothing. I shook my head. Too risky. He's probably watching the place. He works night shift this week, she said. He won't be home from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. We could go tonight. It was a bad idea. I knew it was a bad idea, but she was right. She needed her birth certificate, social security card, all that stuff. So against my better judgment, I agreed. We drove back to town around 10 p.m. Her apartment was in a decent complex not far from my shop. She directed me to park a block away, just in case. I'll be quick, she promised. 15 minutes, tops. I insisted on coming with her. No way was I letting her go in alone. We used her key to get into the building, then took the stairs to the third floor. The hallway was empty, quiet except for a TV blaring from someone else's apartment. Her hands shook as she unlocked the door. The apartment was neat, almost sterile, everything in its place. I followed her inside, feeling like an intruder. I'll grab my documents from the office, she whispered. Can you get my medication from the bathroom? It's the prescription bottle on the counter. I nodded and headed to the bathroom while she went to what I assumed was the home office. The bathroom was spotless, like something from a magazine. I found the prescription bottle, antidepressants, and pocketed it. That's when I heard the front door open. My blood turned to ice. I heard a man's voice, Reynolds, talking to someone. Then Melissa's voice, high and nervous. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. I was trapped. I told you I'd be back for my things, Melissa was saying. You're supposed to be at work. Called in sick, Reynolds replied, his voice casual. Who's here with you, Mel? I saw two people come up. I looked around frantically. The bathroom window was small, but I might be able to squeeze through. It opened onto a fire escape. I started to slide it open as quietly quietly as possible. No one's with me, Melissa said. You're being paranoid again. Don't lie to me. His voice changed, became harder. I heard something crash. Then Melissa cried out. That did it. I abandoned the window and burst out of the bathroom. Reynolds was standing in the living room, gripping Melissa's arm. He spun around when he saw me, surprise flashing across his face before settling into a cold smile. Well, the tattoo artist. I knew you were lying. He was still in uniform, jean on his hip. My stomach dropped. Let her go, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We're just getting her stuff, then we're leaving. Reynolds laughed. You don't get it, do you? She's my girlfriend. This is between us. You need to leave. Melissa wrenched her arm free. I'm not your girlfriend anymore, Mark. I'm done. His face darkened. You don't get to decide that. I stepped forward, putting myself between them. Yes, she does. We're leaving now. I didn't see the punch coming. 1 second I was standing, the next I was on the floor, my jaw exploding with pain. Reynolds stood over me, shaking out his hand. Assaulting an officer, he said calmly. That's a serious offense. You hit him, Melissa shouted. Reynolds ignored her, reaching for his handcuffs. You're under arrest for assaulting a police officer and breaking and entering. I scrambled backward, tasting blood. She has a key. We didn't break in. Your word against mine, he said, advancing on me. What happened next happened so fast, I barely registered it. Melissa grabbed something from the side table. Later I realized it was a heavy glass paperweight and swung it at Reynolds' head. It connected with a sickening thud and he staggered, then collapsed. Oh God, she whispered, dropping the paperweight. Oh God, oh God. I got to my feet, checking Reynolds. He was unconscious, but breathing. Blood trickled from a cut on his temple. We need to go, I said, grabbing her hand. Now. We ran, grabbed her backpack with the documents she'd managed to collect, then bolted down the stairs and out to my car. I drove with shaking hands, expecting police sirens any minute, but nothing happened. We made it back to the cabin without being followed. Melissa was in shock, sitting on the couch with her arms wrapped around herself. I hit a police officer. I'm going to jail. It was self-defense, I said, though I wasn't sure how much that would matter. He attacked me first. No one will believe us, she said flatly. It's his word against ours, and he's a cop. She was right, and we both knew it. Reynolds could spin this however he wanted. I sat down heavily, my jaw throbbing. We need help, professional help. The next morning, I called the only lawyer I knew, Sarah Jenkins, a former client who'd gotten a memorial tattoo for her brother last year. She worked at a legal aid clinic downtown. I gave her a bare-bones version of the situation over the phone. Come to my office, she said, both of you. We need to document everything. I was nervous about going back into town, but we didn't have much choice. Sarah's office was in a small building near the courthouse. She ushered us in quickly, closing the blinds before sitting us down. Show me, she said to Melissa. Wordlessly, Melissa rolled up her sleeves, revealing bruises in various stages of healing. She lifted her shirt to show more across her ribs. Sarah took photos, her face grim. How long has this been happening? 2 years, Melissa said quietly. It started with pushing, grabbing too hard, then slapping, then worse. Sarah turned to me. And you've been helping her hide? I nodded, wincing at the pain in my jaw. Since yesterday, but he found us at her apartment last night. I explained what had happened. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes. He hasn't filed a report, she said when I finished. I checked the system before you arrived. No assault charges, no APB for either of you. That's good, I said uncertainly. Sarah looked grim. Maybe. Or maybe he's handling this personally. Those words hung in the air, chilling me to the bone. Reynolds didn't need the system to find us. He had a badge, a gun, and apparently a grudge. What do we do? Melissa asked. We build a case, Sarah said firmly. Document everything. Every bruise, every threat. We get medical records, witnesses if possible, and we file for an emergency restraining order. Against a cop? I asked skeptically. It's been done before, Sarah said. It's not easy, but it's possible. The key is evidence. Irrefutable evidence. We spent the next few hours going over Melissa's history with Reynolds. It was worse than I'd imagined. The controlling behavior, the isolation from friends and family, the escalating violence. Sarah recorded everything, had Melissa write out a statement. What about last night? I asked. She hit him with a paperweight. Clear self-defense, Sarah said. He attacked you first. She feared for your safety and hers. But we need to get ahead of this. If he does file charges, we need to be ready. As we were leaving, Sarah pulled me aside. Be careful. Men like Reynolds don't give up easily, and they don't play by the rules. I nodded, the weight of the situation settling on my shoulders. What about tonight? Is the cabin still safe? She thought for a moment. For now, yes, but have a backup plan ready. We stopped at my shop so I could grab more supplies and check on things. Everything seemed normal, which somehow made me more nervous. As I was locking up, I noticed a police cruiser driving slowly past. Not Reynolds, another officer I didn't recognize, but he definitely looked at me as he passed. They're watching the shop, I told Melissa when I got back to the car. We need to be more careful. We spent the next few days in a tense holding pattern. I'd go to the shop for a few hours, then return to the cabin. Melissa stayed hidden, jumping at every sound. Sarah worked on the restraining order, gathering evidence and statements. Then things got worse. I arrived at the shop one morning to find the front window smashed. Inside, my equipment was damaged. Tattoo machines broken, ink bottles emptied onto the floor, flash art torn from the wall. walls. On the main tattoo chair, someone had carved a deep scratch across the leather. I called Sarah immediately. She arrived with a photographer, documenting everything before I called the regular police. The responding officers took their time, asked a few questions, and basically shrugged it off as random vandalism. Any enemies we should know about? One asked, not even looking up from his notepad. None that I can think of, I lied. After they left, Sarah looked at me grimly. This is escalating. He's sending a message. I nodded, surveying the damage. What do? We need more evidence against him, she said. Something concrete that ties him directly to the abuse and to this vandalism. That night, I told Melissa about the shop. She broke down crying, blaming herself. I tried to reassure her, but the truth was, I was scared too. Reynolds was clearly unhinged, and he had a badge to hide behind. I should just go back to him, she said, wiping her eyes, before he hurts you or someone else. That's not happening, I said firmly. We're going to fight this. The next day, I got a call from Chris, my biker buddy. Dude, you need to come to the Rusty Nail. Now, the Rusty Nail was a bar where a lot of the local cops hung out. Not exactly a place I wanted to be right now. Why? Just trust me, Chris said. Come alone. Back entrance. I told Melissa to lock the doors and not open them for anyone but me, then drove to the bar, my stomach in knots. Chris was waiting by the back door, looking nervous. What's going on? I asked. There's a cop inside who wants to talk to you. Says he has information about Reynolds. I hesitated. Could be a trap. Chris shook his head. I don't think so. This guy seems legit worried. He's Reynolds' partner, Sergeant Garcia. That got my attention. I followed Chris inside to a small back room. A middle-aged Hispanic man sat at a table, nursing a beer. He looked up when we entered, his face tired. You the tattoo guy? He asked. I nodded, staying near the door in case I needed to bolt. I'm Sergeant Garcia. I've been Mark's partner for 3 years. He sighed heavily. Look, I don't know exactly what's going on, but Mark's not right. He's been different lately. Aggressive, paranoid. Different how? I asked cautiously. Garcia looked uncomfortable. We got a domestic disturbance call a few months back. Young couple fighting. Mark was too rough with the woman. Said she was resisting, but she wasn't. I reported it, but nothing happened. My blood ran cold. And you think he's doing the same to his girlfriend? I've suspected for a while. She stopped coming to department functions. Always had excuses for bruises. He pulled out his phone. Then I saw this yesterday. He showed me a text from Reynolds. Need to take care of that tattoo guy. He's interfering in personal business. You in? I didn't respond, Garcia said. But I'm worried he's going to do something stupid. More stupid than damaging your shop. I stared at him. That was him? Garcia nodded. He didn't say it outright, but he came in yesterday morning with a cut on his hand. Said he caught it in a door. This was it. The evidence we needed. Would you be willing to make a statement? Officially? He hesitated. It's complicated. There's a code. This guy is dangerous, I said. To Melissa, to me, probably to others. And he's using his badge to get away with it. Garcia was quiet for a long moment. Let me think about it. In the meantime, watch your back. Mark's on duty tonight, but he's been taking a lot of personal time lately. I thanked him and left, my mind racing. This could be the break we needed. An insider willing to speak out. But until Garcia committed, we were still in danger. When I got back to the cabin, something felt off. The lights were on, which was normal, but the front door was slightly ajar. I approached cautiously, heart pounding. Melissa? I called, pushing the door open. The cabin was a disaster. Furniture overturned, drawers emptied, glass broken, and no sign of Melissa. On the kitchen table was a note, written in what looked like lipstick. She's mine. Back off, or next time, it's your blood. I called Sarah immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She told me to meet her at the police station, not the one where Reynolds worked, but the county sheriff's office. Bring the note, she said, and anything else that might have his fingerprints. The next few hours were a blur, filing a missing person report, showing the sheriff the evidence we had, photos of Melissa's bruises, the vandalism at my shop, Garcia's text message, which he had agreed to share after I called him in a panic. The sheriff took it seriously, especially when Sarah mentioned Reynolds was a police officer. We'll put out an alert for both of them, he said, and I'll contact internal affairs at the city PD. But I couldn't just sit and wait. While the official search was happening, I called everyone I knew who might be able to help. The biker crew spread out across town, checking motels and back roads. My regular clients shared Melissa's photo, an old one from before the recent abuse, to protect her privacy. Even Mrs. Rodriguez from the biker crew made calls to her church group, asking them to keep an eye out. 2 agonizing days passed with no sign of either Melissa or Reynolds. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I stayed at my shop, which the biker crew had helped clean up, waiting for news. Sarah checked in regularly, but the official search was moving frustratingly slowly. Then, on the 3rd day, I got a text from an unknown number. Cabin in the woods, 2 miles past the hunting lodge. Come alone, or she dies. I stared at the message, my blood running cold. It had to be Reynolds. He wanted to lure me out there, probably to cull us both and make it look like a murder sewers lied or something. But what choice did I have? I called Sarah first, showing her the text. It's a trap, she said immediately. I know, but he has Melissa. Let the sheriff handle this. I shook my head. There's no time. And if Reynolds sees cops coming, Sarah looked grim. At least let me call Garcia. He might be able to help without escalating things. I agreed to that compromise. While she made the call, I prepared myself as best I could. said. I wasn't a fighter, had never even been in a real fist fight before Reynolds punched me, but I had to try. Garcia met me at a gas station near the hunting area. He was off duty, wearing civilian clothes, but I could see the outline of his GN under his jacket. This is a bad idea, he said bluntly. Mark's not stable. He's been talking crazy at work, paranoid stuff about his girlfriend cheating, about people being out to get him. All the more reason we need to get to Melissa, I said. Garcia nodded reluctantly. I know the cabin he's talking about. Old Forest Service building, abandoned years ago. We'll approach from different directions. I'll try to talk him down, but he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The cabin was deep in the woods, accessible only by a rutted dirt track. We parked a quarter-mile away and approached on foot, Garcia circling around to the back while I took the front. The place looked deserted, no vehicles visible, no lights inside. But as I got closer, I could see a thin trail of smoke from the chimney. I crept onto the porch, wincing at every creak of the old boards. Through a dirty window, I could make out a figure slumped in a chair. Melissa, her hands tied behind her back. No sign of Reynolds. I was about to try the door when a voice spoke from behind me. I knew you'd come alone. So predictable. I turned slowly. Reynolds stood at the bottom of the porch steps, his service weapon pointed at my chest. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, uniform rumpled like he'd been sleeping in it. Where's your backup? He asked, glancing around. The bikers? That lawyer bitch? I raised my hand slowly. Just me. Let Melissa go, Mark. This is between you and me now. He laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. There is no between you and me. There's just me and what's mine. You're nothing. A distraction. She's not yours, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. She's a person, not property. His face darkened. You turned her against me, filled her head with ideas. You did that yourself, I said. Every time you hit her, every time you controlled her. He took a step forward, Jean still trained on me. You don't understand. I love her. Everything I did was to protect her. From what? From herself, he shouted. From making mistakes. She needs guidance, structure. I heard movement inside the cabin. Melissa must have regained consciousness. I needed to keep Reynolds talking, keep his attention on me. So what's your plan here? I asked. Call me? Call her? Then what? He blinked, as if he hadn't thought that far ahead. We're leaving, starting fresh somewhere else. As fugitives? You're a cop, Mark. You know how this ends. His hand trembled slightly. Shut up. You don't know anything. I know Garcia is worried about you, I said, taking a gamble. He told me you've been acting strange at work. People are noticing. That hit a nerve. Garcia? He talked to you? His face contorted with rage. That traitor. I knew it. Everyone's against me. The door behind me burst open. Melissa stood there, hands still bound but a determined look on her face. Mark, please, put the GN down. His attention shifted to her, just for a second. That's when Garcia made his move, emerging from the side of the cabin with his weapon drawn. Drop it, Mark, he shouted. It's over. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Reynolds swung his GN toward Garcia. I lunged forward, tackling him around the waist. We crashed to the ground, the GN firing into the air. We struggled, rolling in the dirt, his strength fueled by rage, while I fought with pure desperation. I heard shouting, Melissa, Garcia, but couldn't make out the words. Reynolds got on top of me, hands around my throat. Black spots danced in my vision as I clawed at his arms. Then suddenly, the pressure was gone. Reynolds slumped to the side, unconscious. Behind him stood Melissa, holding a large branch, her face a mask of determination, despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. Garcia rushed forward, securing Reynolds' weapon and checking his pulse. He's alive, he confirmed, pulling out handcuffs. It's over, but it wasn't quite over. There was the aftermath, statements to the sheriff, a hospital visit for Melissa's injuries and my bruised throat, the slow process of building a case against Reynolds. He was charged with kidnapping, assault, false imprisonment, and a host of other crimes. With Garcia's testimony about his erratic behavior and the mountain of evidence Sarah had compiled, even the thin blue line couldn't protect him. Melissa stayed with me for a few weeks while she figured out next steps. The biker crew took turns keeping watch at my shop, just in case Reynolds had friends who might want revenge, but nothing happened. It seemed most of his colleagues were happy to distance themselves from him once the truth came out. One evening, as we sat in my apartment above the shop, Melissa looked at me thoughtfully. Why did you help me? You barely knew me. I thought about my sister, about all the times I wished someone had stepped in to help her. Sometimes people just need someone to see them, really see them. She nodded, understanding. I want another tattoo, she said suddenly. A phoenix, rising from ashes, right over the worst of the scars on my back. I smiled. I think I can manage that. I started on Melissa's phoenix tattoo the next day. She wanted it big, covering most of her upper back where the worst scars were. I spent hours just on the design, making sure every line would work with her skin and hide the marks Reynolds had left. When I showed her the final sketch, she actually cried a little. It's perfect, she said, touching the paper gently. When can we start? Whenever you're ready, I told her. This is gonna take multiple sessions though. Back pieces are no joke. We scheduled the first session for the following week. In the meantime, Sarah was working overtime on the case against Reynolds. He was being held without bail, which gave us all some breathing room. Garcia had officially gone on record about Reynolds' behavior at work, and 3 other women had come forward with stories about uncomfortable encounters with him while he was on duty. The morning of Melissa's first tattoo session, I got a call from Sarah. "Reynolds is trying to make a deal," she said without preamble. My stomach dropped. "What kind of deal?" "He'll plead guilty to reduce charges if they drop the kidnapping and some of the assault counts." She sounded mad. "His lawyer is pushing the dedicated officer having a mental health crisis angle." "That's bullshit," I said, my free hand clenching into a fist. He knew exactly what he was doing. "I know, the DA's office isn't biting yet, but I wanted you and Melissa to be prepared. This might get messy." I thanked her and hung up, not looking forward to telling Melissa. She'd been doing better, sleeping through the night, eating regularly, even laughing sometimes. This news might set her back. When she arrived for her tattoo appointment, I could tell something was off. She was fidgety, kept checking her phone. "Everything okay?" I asked as I set up my station. She hesitated, then showed me her phone. It was a text from a number she didn't recognize. "He still has friends outside. Watch your back." I felt a chill run down my spine. "When did you get this?" "This morning," she said, her voice small. "Do you think it's real?" I didn't know, but I wasn't taking chances. I called Chris immediately, explaining the situation. Within an hour, 2 of his biker buddies were parked outside the shop, pretending to be customers while keeping an eye out. I also called Sarah, who promised to talk to the sheriff about the threat. Despite the tension, we went ahead with the tattoo session. I figured keeping to our routine was better than letting fear control us. Melissa lay face down on the table while I worked on the outline of the phoenix. The steady buzz of the machine was almost meditative, helping both of us calm down. "Does it hurt?" I asked after about an hour. "Yeah," she said, her voice muffled against the headrest. "But it's a good kind of pain, like I'm taking back control." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I understood that feeling. Every tattoo I'd gotten after my own rough patches had felt the same way. We were about halfway through the outline when the shop door opened. I looked up, expecting to see one of the bikers coming in to check on us. Instead, it was a woman I'd never seen before. Tall, blonde, professional looking in a pantsuit. "Can I help you?" I asked, not stopping my work. She approached slowly, eyes fixed on Melissa's back. "I'm Detective Laura Simmons, Internal Affairs." She showed me a badge. "I need to speak with Ms. Wilson." Melissa tensed under my hands. "About what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "New developments in the Reynolds case," Simmons said. "I'd prefer to discuss it privately." I stopped tattooing and set down the machine. "We're kind of in the middle of something here." Melissa sat up, holding a towel against her chest. "It's okay, Tony. I want to hear this." I reluctantly stepped out, joining the bikers in the front of the shop while Melissa and Simmons talked in the back room. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but through the partially open door, I could see Melissa's face going through a range of emotions: surprise, anger, then something like determination. After about 20 minutes, Simmons left with a nod in my direction. Melissa came out looking shaken but somehow stronger. "What was that about?" I asked once we were alone. "They found stuff on Reynolds's computer," she said quietly. "Photos of me and other women, and records of him using police resources to track people, including you." I felt sick. "Jesus. There's more," she continued. "He was part of an online forum for cops who—" She trailed off, then took a deep breath. "For cops who believe they have the right to discipline their wives and girlfriends. He was getting advice there, sharing techniques." My hands clenched involuntarily. "Please tell me they're investigating everyone in that forum." She nodded. "That's why Simmons came personally. They're building a bigger case now, and they want me to testify." "Are you going to?" Melissa looked at me, her eyes clearer and more determined than I'd ever seen them. "Absolutely. I'm done being scared." We didn't finish the tattoo that day. Melissa was too emotionally drained, and frankly, so was I. But she came back the next day, and we got through another few hours of work on the Phoenix. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Melissa would come in for tattoo sessions 3 times a week. Sarah would update us on the case. The bikers kept watch, though less obviously as time went on, and slowly, things started to feel almost normal. Then one night, as I was closing up shop, I noticed a car parked across the street. It had been there all day, and the driver hadn't gotten out once, just sat there, watching. I pretended not to notice as I locked the front door, then slipped out the back and circled around to get a better look. It was a woman, middle-aged, with short, dark hair. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. As I approached, she rolled down her window. "You're the tattoo artist," she said, not a question. I nodded cautiously. "Can I help you?" "I'm Mark's sister, Vanessa." My blood ran cold, but she held up a hand. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I wanted to see the man my brother's been obsessing over." I stayed a few steps back, ready to bolt if needed. "What do you want?" She sighed, looking tired. "To apologize, I guess. I knew Mark had issues. I've known since we were kids, but I never thought—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "I should have done something sooner." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know not everyone in his family is standing behind him." She met my eyes directly. "I've been talking to that lawyer, Ms. Jenkins, telling her about Mark's history, things that might help your friend's case." I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me was suspicious this was some kind of trap, but she seemed genuine. "Thank you," I finally managed. She nodded once, then rolled up her window and drove away. I stood there for a long moment, processing what had just happened. When I finally went back inside, I called Sarah immediately to confirm Vanessa's story. "It's true," Sarah said, sounding surprised. She contacted me last week, has records of Reynolds's violent behavior going back to his teens. Their parents covered it up, got him into the police academy despite some red flags. She's been carrying that guilt for years. Do you trust her? Sarah hesitated. I'm cautious by nature, but her information checks out, and she seems genuinely remorseful. This could really strengthen our case. I told Melissa about the encounter the next day during her tattoo session. We were making good progress on the phoenix. The outline was complete, and I'd started adding color to the wings. She listened quietly as I worked. I met her once, she said when I finished, at a department Christmas party. She seemed nice but uncomfortable around Mark. Now I understand why. Does it help? I asked, knowing his family isn't all supporting him. She thought about it as I wiped excess ink from her skin. Yeah, actually, it does. Makes me feel less crazy, you know? Like there's outside confirmation that he's the problem, not me. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The DA's office, bolstered by the new evidence from internal affairs and Vanessa's testimony, refused Reynolds' plea deal. They were going for maximum charges. Meanwhile, the investigation into the online forum had led to suspensions for 3 other officers in different departments. Melissa's phoenix tattoo was coming along beautifully. Each session seemed to make her stronger, more confident. She'd found a new apartment in a secure building and was talking about going back to school to finish her teaching degree. I couldn't have done any of this without you, she told me during one session. I shook my head. You did the hard part. I just provided a hiding spot and some ink. She smiled and believed me. That mattered more than anything. The preliminary hearing for Reynolds's case was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Melissa was nervous but determined to face him. I offered to go with her for support, and she accepted gratefully. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways. Sarah met us at the entrance, professional in a navy suit, but with a small tattoo visible on her wrist, one I'd done for her months ago, a simple scales of justice design. Ready? She asked Melissa. Melissa took a deep breath and nodded, as I'll ever be. We followed Sarah through security and into a crowded courtroom. Reynolds was already there, sitting beside his lawyer in an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller somehow, less threatening. When he saw Melissa, his face twisted with emotion, anger, longing, something else I couldn't identify. I put my hand on Melissa's shoulder, and she straightened her spine, refusing to look away. A small victory, but an important one. The hearing itself was brief but intense. The prosecution laid out their case: the physical abuse, the stalking, the kidnapping, the evidence from Reynolds's computer. His lawyer tried to paint him as a dedicated officer suffering from job-related stress and PTSD, but the judge wasn't buying it. When it was over, the judge denied bail again and set a trial date. As Reynolds was led away, he looked back once, his eyes finding Melissa in the crowd. She stared right back, unflinching. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Sarah fielded most of their questions, keeping Melissa shielded from the worst of it. As we walked to the parking lot, Melissa suddenly stopped. I want to say something, she said, turning back toward the small cluster of journalists. Are you sure? I asked. You don't have to. She nodded firmly. I need to. We went back, and Sarah helped create a small space for Melissa to speak. She didn't say much, just that she hoped her case would help other women in similar situations find the courage to leave, and that she was grateful for the support she'd received. As she spoke, I noticed a group of women standing at the edge of the crowd. They weren't reporters. They were watching Melissa with a kind of fierce pride. One caught my eye and nodded slightly. I realized these must be the other women who had come forward about Reynolds. After the impromptu press conference, one of them approached us. Thank you, she said simply to Melissa, for being brave enough to go first. Melissa's eyes welled up, and the 2 women hugged briefly. No more words were needed. The final session for Melissa's phoenix tattoo happened 2 days before Reynolds's trial was set to begin. The piece was stunning, vibrant colors rising from subtle gray ashes. The wings spread wide across her back, covering most of the scars. It's perfect, she said, examining it in the mirror. Exactly what I needed. As I was cleaning up, she handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a check for way more than the cost of the tattoo, plus a card. The message was simple. For the next person who needs help, thank you for seeing me. I looked up, confused. I can't take this. It's not for you, she explained. It's for the next person who comes in with bruises they can't explain, or the one after that. A fund to help them get tattoos, or a safe place, or whatever they need. I was speechless. It was such a perfect idea that I couldn't believe I hadn't thought of it myself. We'll call it the Phoenix Fund, she continued, warming to the idea, for people rising from their own ashes. Reynolds's trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming, especially with Vanessa's testimony about his history of violence and the records from his computer. In the end, he was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 15 years. Melissa was there for the sentencing, sitting between me and Sarah. When the judge announced the verdict, she didn't cheer or cry. She just nodded once, like she was closing a chapter. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by the other survivors who had testified, she finally smiled, a real, full smile that reached her eyes. What now? I asked as we walked to my car. She thought for a moment. Now I get to just live, figure out who I am without all all this hanging over me. Sounds like a good plan. 6 months later, my shop was busier than ever. Word had gotten around about the Phoenix Fund, and we'd helped 3 women get tattoos to cover scars and 2 others find safe housing. Chris and his biker crew had become unofficial security consultants, helping women secure their homes and teaching basic self-defense. Melissa stopped by occasionally, usually with baked goods or coffee. She was back in school, living in her new apartment, slowly rebuilding her life. Her Phoenix tattoo had healed beautifully. One day, she brought in a young woman with familiar haunted eyes and a poorly hidden bruise on her wrist. "This is Amanda," Melissa said. "She needs a tattoo and maybe someone to talk to." I nodded, understanding immediately. "I've got time right now, if you want to sit down and discuss designs." Amanda looked nervously between us, then at the phoenix visible on Melissa's shoulder where her shirt slipped down. "Does it hurt?" she asked quietly. Melissa and I exchanged a look. "Yes," Melissa said honestly, "but not as much as staying." Amanda nodded slowly. "Okay, I think I'm ready." As I led them both to the consultation table, I caught Melissa's eye. She gave me a small smile, part gratitude, part pride, part something else I couldn't quite name, but I understood it perfectly. The cycle was continuing, but this time in a way that healed rather than hurt, and that made all the difference.